Hi everyone, my name's Irene and I'm an incoming third year student at Rotman Commerce, and in today's video I thought I would answer a couple of FAQs about Rotman Commerce because I currently work as a student ambassador for Rotman, which means I do all of the student tours, touring the U of T campus of course, for prospective students and parents, and so naturally I get a lot of one-on-one connection with them and they ask a lot of questions, and I thought it would be good to compile all of that today and then answer it in video format. But for some context, I said I'm an incoming third year student. I also specialize in management. Now, if you don't know already, choose your specialization at the end of first year for your second year and onwards, and you can change that later on as well. But anyway, I specialize in management with a focus in marketing and strategy and innovation. And then I also minor in economics, which almost every Rotman Commerce student has. That kind of automatically comes with it. But this one, diaspora and transnational studies, is not something that every Rotman Commerce student has. That one is just a minor that I picked. Not every Rotman student has another minor, you could say though. I know if you're not really a part of Rotman yet, that might sound like a bunch of nonsense, but you don't need to worry about that right now. All you need to know is that I'm interested in marketing, and that's about it. So let's get started with the questions now. So the first one is, why did you choose Rotman? This one is nothing too crazy. I get asked this a lot, what stands out about Rotman? And you could say the city life, the really convenient campus, because it's really close to the financial district if you are interested in pursuing finance afterwards. So really convenient for different events that companies hold or coffee chats, things like that. But for me, it was just wanting to experience something new. I was from Calgary, so I wasn't raised in Ontario at all. I didn't go to school in Ontario, so I thought it would be cool to experience the city life and also go to U of T, which is a pretty well-known school. And I also had seniors that I was close to that attended Rotman Commerce, and they all said that it was a positive experience. So I decided to choose Rotman Commerce above all of the other business programs that I apply to in Canada. The next question is something that I get asked very often by prospective students and even parents as well, and that is, what grades do you need to get into Rotman Commerce? Now this one is a tough answer because I just can't tell you oh, an 85 average or a 90 average, those are just random numbers and they won't even be helpful anyways, because even if I say 85, what are you gonna do? Try to get an 85? It just doesn't work like that. But also, Rotman Commerce looks at your application in a holistic way, which means they're looking at your supplemental application and also your grades. So both of those are a 50-50. It's not one's more important than the other. So let's say if you have lower grades, a really strong supplemental application could save that. You could say, obviously only to a certain extent. If you have 40%, obviously they aren't going to let you in, even if you have a super strong supplemental application, but to a certain extent, there is a balance of both. Obviously, that also has to do with how your supplemental application goes, which I guess I'll just quickly go into that. So it's going to be 2 written questions and 2 video responses. Both are timed and also random questions, so you don't know what you're going to get except for the self-introduction that you do. That one is a given and the same question every single year pretty much, but the other ones are from a question box. So for every person that does their supplemental application, it's going to be a different question. Timed, you won't be able to redo it unfortunately, and that's just kind of how it goes. Oh, and another thing to add is the questions aren't necessarily technical. They're more so looking at how you communicate and kind of convey your ideas, I suppose, more than how much business knowledge do you have. You don't need to have any business knowledge prior to coming into Rotman Commerce, so you don't need to worry about prepping for that. I would rather just say prep for how you're going to communicate and not be nervous during the actual application. The next question is, are your extracurriculars important? Now this one, yes, to a certain degree. I applied to UBC as well, and UBC's solder program actually asks you to list off all of the extracurriculars you did, and also I think leave 2 references, but U of T doesn't ask for a list of them. It's also good to mention your extracurriculars in your supplemental application and kind of use that as a support system when you're conveying your ideas or introducing yourself. So great to have, but it's not a must, I suppose you could say. It's kind of a funny story, but as a Rotman Commerce student ambassador, you're actually not allowed to write down comments under Reddit posts, under high schoolers posting, oh, I have this, can I get in? I see a bunch saying, this is all of the extracurriculars I've done, can I get into Rotman? Kind of doesn't work like that. Even if you have the best extracurriculars, if you kind of botched your supplemental application and you messed up all of your words, you didn't convey any of your ideas or respond to any of the questions, it's not gonna work, if that makes sense. Okay, I feel like I'm being pretty negative, but I hope the other questions can kind of make up for that. But the next question is, what are some tips for applying to Rotman Commerce? My best tip is to prepare yourself right before you do your supplemental application. So search up supplemental application questions. If you want specific to Rotman, you can do that too. Obviously, you're not guaranteed to get any of those questions in your actual application, but I think it's good to go through them to give you an idea of what these questions might look like, how you would respond to them. What I remember doing back in grade 12 is filming myself actually responding to these questions and then seeing how I look, how I sound, how I convey these ideas. And then once I was satisfied with that, I think it gave me like a peace of mind. I was like, okay, I think I like how I sound and how I look. Let's just start this application. And then I started it. But also don't like stress too much about it because they aren't looking for perfect responses. They know that you're on a time crunch. They know that you're nervous. Everyone's nervous while they're doing this. Now, the next question is something that I wondered about when I was a high school student, and then I realized I got into Rotman. I was like, oh my gosh, is this gonna be hell? So the question is Rotman Commerce hard? Now, honestly, during first year, I might have said yes because I was low-key going through it. Like, obviously not going through it, but in high school, I never took any econ courses, accounting courses, finance courses. I was new to all of that. So even like supply and demand, like I was still new to that, which is crazy. I know people did econ oh my gosh, what am I saying? AP or IB. I like mix those two up, but I never took those, so I was like completely thrown into it. But still, I think first year was more of an adjustment period, and I think a lot of university students go through that as well. I was living away from home for the first time. I was introduced to all these concepts that I never learned before, so my grades were definitely lower than what I got in high school, and then I think that was like a little bit shocking. But in my second year, it definitely rose, and I think in my third and fourth year it's gonna get even higher. I know this is super cliche to say, but whatever you put into your studies, you actually get back. So as long as you try and study well before your exams and listen during lectures, make sure you comprehend all of the concepts, and if you don't, ask your professors. This is like so cliche, but actually you need to do all this. Like whenever I did actually ask the professors or asked for help, I got higher grades, and that's just naturally how it goes. The next question is, what are your tips for surviving your first year at Rotman Commerce? I have a couple of ideas. So the first one is find your group of friends. I know this one is like easier said than done, but once you find your support system and find people that you can like relate your struggles with, maybe even in the same program as you can study with them and study for exams as well, I think that would be great. For me, I lived on campus, so I kind of found like a group of people that lived at St. Michael's College and also was in the Rotman Commerce program, and we all kind of like made a group and we studied before like management exams, econ exams, and all had dinner right before exams too. Like all of it was so cute, and I think that having that kind of support is really important. Even if you live off campus, finding a couple of friends that you can study with on campus would be really good. And then the next one is kind of finding your study method. I think it took me honestly more than a year to find this, but what works for you? Like studying at a library, studying at home, what kind of note-taking method works for you the best and makes it easier for you to understand during lectures and also review afterwards. Finding that right spot for you, I think, is really important. And in high school, I obviously studied, but I didn't study as much as I did in university. So that kind of like searching is really important. Maybe you've already got that down, I don't know. A lot of people say Eco 101 is the hardest Rotman Commerce course. Now, I would personally maybe disagree with that and say second year courses are a little bit more difficult, but obviously as a first year it might feel a bit more difficult for you. But for Eco 101, my biggest tip is to actually go to office hours. My professor at the time was Professor Ghazali, and I would go to his office hours not just before exams, not just like during exam week, but well before as well, and ask like a list of questions that I prepared in advance. You'll see that when it's not really like busy season, not like exam season, a lot of people don't go to office hours, so there won't be too many people there and you will be able to ask your questions and get answers. Now, if you could do first year all over again, what would you do differently? This one's a great question because a lot of people do ask me this, but I literally cannot think of a response because I was just like the best ever first year student you could think of. Like I attended every single, like not every single, but like a lot of Rotman Commerce events, from clubs to whatever Rotman actually hosted to different like networking events. I feel like a lot of them weren't necessary. Like obviously they weren't gonna get me a job later on, all those networking events that I went to, but it was good for me to build a sense of like what I wanted to do. When I attended like info sessions, I was like, okay, maybe this isn't for me. And when I heard about different speakers talking about a certain topic, I was like, oh, I could relate to that, and maybe that is something that I'm interested in. When I first entered university, I was pretty sure that I wanted to work in marketing, so a couple of events that I attended kind of like affirmed that, but maybe you don't know what you want to do later on. I think exploring that is really important, and I also found a lot of clubs, and I figured out this club I don't really vibe with, but this club I do. And so later I applied to those clubs that I did vibe with and then got into those. Later story, I suppose. So I would still go to a bunch of events and try my hardest to go to all of them, even if it's exam season. I remember right before my Eco 101 exam 2, midterm 2, I went to a networking event hosted by RCIG, which is a club, and I was like, I'm insane for this, but it was still a great experience, and I don't think like 3 hours more of studying would have gotten me a super high mark or impacted my GPA in a significant manner. The next question is living on campus important? Now, I would recommend living on campus if that situation works for you, but if not, that's totally fine. I have a bunch of friends that live off campus, and like we're still friends even though we didn't live on campus together. A lot of my friends that I'm the closest to, like I didn't live with them at St. Mike's College. So I don't think it matters too much as long as you make the effort. Obviously, if you live off campus, you're gonna have to make more effort than maybe someone who does live on campus. But even if you live on campus, you still have to make the effort to talk to people and really like sit down with people and eat lunch with them and things like that. So I don't think it matters too much. The next question is it hard to make friends, and are these students extremely competitive? And oh my gosh, I saw these posts all the time. They said like, oh my gosh, Rotman Commerce students never share any information with one another because they're all for themselves, and later when they find a job, like they're gonna be me first. And I was like so worried because I didn't have any friends going into Rotman. That was my year, so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna be able to make friends, but that was not the case at all. The people that I'm closest to, like we share information all the time, like we help each other if there's something that we're confused with, one of us will help, and it's just like a really supportive community in my first year and my second year that I found, and maybe that's just for me, maybe I was just super lucky, but also you attract like what you are. Does that make sense? Like if you are super snaky all the time and never ever share like stuff with people, share notes, things like that, you're probably gonna get that energy back. And obviously there are people that are like this at Rotman. Like not everybody can be perfect, but I don't think it's the case where it's like majority of people like this and that's just like the vibe in the air. Not the case at all. Next question, what is the best part about Rotman Commerce? I also get asked this a lot, maybe more by parents, but I think it's the people I found. It's so cliche. My friends are gonna watch this and be like, ah. No, it's actually the best part. I think if you have really good friends, like your university life is gonna be so much more fun and enjoyable. So that's my short answer. The next one is more so for first year students. I don't know, this video is kind of also for people that are incoming, but also for first years, and that is bird course recommendations. If you don't know what a bird course is, it's kind of like those easier elective courses that you don't want to share to other people because you want to take it yourself. But that one for me is gonna be DTS 200. That's what I took in my first year because there was a DTS 300 course that I really wanted to take, fun in diaspora, and a prereq for that was DTS 200. So I was like, oh, fine, I'll take this. Now, one thing to note about it, it is a full year course, meaning that it's kind of like MAT 133 where you have to dedicate like one course per semester to it basically, and you get 1 credit instead of 0.5 credits, which is the standard, you could say. And this course is super nice because there is no final exam or midterm. Even though it's a full year course, there are no exams at all, and you do have a take-home essay and a couple of assignments here and there, but it's a super chill course, especially compared to your Rotman courses, which are gonna be a lot more heftier. So I highly recommend you guys take this. This is not sponsored by that department at all. I wish, guys. I feel like I could be a really good ambassador for the diaspora program as well. But that's a story for another time. And I know a lot of people take CSC 100 or 108, sorry, which is the introductory column sci course. I actually took that in my second year, and I found that I just wasn't really a column sci person. I thought I did have to like know maybe like the basics of computer science because it would be nice to learn. And while I'm at university, like why not? But I don't think I'm going to pursue the data science focus personally. But I think if you've always had like an interest in comp sci, then I highly recommend that course. And the last question, keeping on the positive note, like, do you recommend coming to Rotman Commerce? And no, I don't recommend it at all. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be making this video or be a student ambassador at Rotman at all, or volunteering at like orientation events. No, I actually really like it here, and I wouldn't change my mind at all. I literally don't know what university I would have picked if it weren't for Rotman, and I know that sounds kind of like weird, but I don't know. I don't regret it at all. I'm also not a very like regretful kind of person. I typically just go with the flow and think everything happens for a reason, right? Alright, that's it for this video. If you have any other questions about Rotman or think I should make like a specific video on something, like maybe like a tour video of the Rotman spaces we use, or like a course recommendation or like a prof recommendation video, let me know. I'm open to anything, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!